It's travel day! So we just left the farm in East Tennessee where we have been wintering for our first winter as full-time RVers. And we are headed to sunny Florida. This is our first long distance trip. So excited, and stay tuned for more.
Impeccable timing, don't we?
Absolutely. We left on a Thursday, stayed in a Planet Fitness parking lot in Savannah overnight, and then continued down to Jacksonville on Friday.
Planet Fitness parking lot in Savannah, Georgia. And how'd you sleep?
Not good.
No. So we realized not too long after we started to turn in for the night that we are parked just a couple of miles from an Air National Guard base and planes flying overhead, helicopters, so
we're doing training missions in the middle of the night. Yeah. It was awesome.
Pulling out of Savannah, headed to Jacksonville, about 2.5 hours away.
Where do we go from here? We could go anywhere. Where do we go from here? We could go anywhere. Life has its ups and downs, twists and turns. It can be dark and cold, but if you want some open road.
We arrived at the city park where we were planning to spend about 10 days in Jacksonville.
Starting 3/14, park closed until further notice.
You are
What is today?
kidding me. The 13th. Oh my gosh.
My phone rings as I pull up to the window, and I notice there's a lady in the background on the phone, and turns out she was talking to me, telling me that they were shutting down our campground and we had till noon the next day to evacuate.
We are unfortunately evacuating our campsite.
We had this trip planned for a really long time, and things really had not gotten crazy by the time we left, or we might have reconsidered our trip.
So wait a minute, we just drove 9 hours.
So we just found out.
Today, I am indefinitely suspending events and gatherings in city facilities. We're also closing all city-owned parks at the close of business today.
We just pulled into our park only to discover that they're closing the park tomorrow and evacuating all campers.
Can you imagine how your kids would have felt if when you got to Florida it was closed?
Oh, they don't close Florida. No, you.
Well, I know they
can
don't
get
close
boats
the state of Florida,
Florida.
but you know.
We were just at the very beginning of when this outbreak started to hit the media, and they started to take action. So we did get to spend that night.
Where do we go from here? We could go anywhere.
Here is what we were supposed to be calling home for the next week. Unfortunately, they are evacuating this campground, so therefore they are giving us till noon, which was nice of them. We did get to stay last night. So our plan is to head south towards Daytona Beach for our first stop.
Instead of picking another park at the time, we decided we would just kind of explore down the East Coast and see what we could find. So we drove down to Daytona Beach. We actually just ended up boondocking at a Planet Fitness parking lot there in town, and we had a great experience there. Huge parking lot around the back was very private. We had a lot of shade.
Yeah, this has been a nice little boondocking place. There's a great wooded area. You can see the RV is right there. So fairly safe back there.
That's where we ended up staying while we were in Daytona Beach for 2 nights.
Last night we did have quite a bit of odd activity going on at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Apparently there's a small Asian food restaurant right here that decided to do some, I guess, spring cleaning. We decided that today we would go ahead and try to find us a new spot. It is Monday and private campground offices are open.
And then we left Daytona Beach and actually found a little private campground in Flagler Beach that was accepting reservations.
And it happened to be for the last 4 days that we were supposed to have been staying.
After we had been there for a couple of days, they did end up closing a lot of their public facilities. So their pool was closed. All of the social functions that they had there, they just canceled to be on the safe side.
And they did seem to be ahead of the game with their cleanliness and the CDC guidelines.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, the second day we were there, they did close down all the restaurants.
Where do we go from here? We could go anywhere.
Tissue paper, toilet paper, paper towels. This is what's left. We wanted to go back to Jacksonville to see some family, but which they actually called and said they were going into quarantine, and rightfully so. By that time, the beach was the only thing open, so we could go to the beach, and there was a few people there, but it wasn't enough to where we were unable to maintain a safe enough distance.
Yeah.
So did get some good beach time, relaxing.
At that point, the CDC had announced that they didn't want people to gather in bigger groups than 10 people. We actually saw some of the beach patrol going through and separating some larger groups of people that were gathered.
Then they started to close down the public restrooms and the piers, and when things were closing, we were staying away.
Florida numbers were, as far as case numbers for the coronavirus, were pretty high while we were there and were rising rapidly. Thank goodness it seemed like we kind of outran it.
We were staying glued to the news. So fortunately enough, we were able to get through our vacation. We did actually cut 1 day short just because we wanted to go ahead and head north. So we went ahead and took off to get back to Tennessee. And I gotta be honest with you, I've made the drive from northern Florida to Tennessee back and forth.
Yeah.
I can't even count how many times. I don't have enough fingers and toes, I know that. But it was the easiest drive. There were a lot of trucks.
Atlanta was really, really dead, which
nothing.
we've never seen before.
We had one stop to make that involved a concert and another campground that unfortunately was canceled and rescheduled. So it was a good trip back.
Yeah.
We did, towards the end of our trip, it was starting to get dark, and we did notice a couple of the rest stops were packed with truckers and RVers, things like that. So we luckily made it all the way to our destination before it was too late. We did have a private campground already reserved for when we got back.
So that's where we've been quarantined since and have been keeping a close eye on the situation to see how all of this is going to play out. We are really trying to stay positive and laugh, and I know that we make a lot of jokes, and we just want to encourage you that we are not in any way making light of this situation. We're taking it very seriously, and we hope you are too, because we know it's a very serious situation for so many different people.
Yeah, it is very serious, and you know, there's still people out there that think this is some sort of a joke or a hoax, and it's not. There's people dying, and it's a very serious thing. So we hope that this video, we can be a little bit of a representation of full-time RVers. There's over 1 million of us out there now, and we learned through the course of the last couple of weeks that sometimes full-time RVers fall through the cracks when legislation is making changes, and when there's decisions that are having to be made on the fly, sometimes they don't think about us. So we're here to tell you that it's something that we do have to keep on the forefront and make sure that we advocate for ourselves, because when some of these parks close down, they put full-time RVers on the street thinking that we're just weekend campers, and we're not. Not all of us have a place to go home to.
While we were in Jacksonville and discovered that our park was being shut down and evacuated, we found out that there were people living there in the park who had family members who were patients at the Mayo Clinic and were from out of state, and that was the way that they were taking care of themselves while they were in treatments at the hospital. And so they weren't exempt from this evacuation, and we just felt very strongly that we should step up and make sure that we're doing something to give a voice to all of these people who don't have any other choice.
Yeah, and this situation will pass and we will be allowed to travel as we always were. But for right now, things are changing by the hour and by the day. So we need everybody to be aware of how things are affecting full-time RVers.
Exactly. We've always joked that if you were not a flexible type personality, RVing full-time, not for you. And we've known that since day one when we started our adventure. And this video, I think, shows you some really great examples of how you always have to have a backup plan. You can't plan out your full year and say this is exactly what we're going to do and exactly when we're going to do it, because you really just never know. So being laid back and having a little bit more flexibility will really make this lifestyle a lot more enjoyable for you.
Definitely. And we do thank you very much for watching this video, and please share it with not only your friends, but whoever you think might get something good out of this video.
Absolutely. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and click on the bell to receive notifications when we put out all of our new material. We're so grateful for you guys and look forward to sharing more of our life with you.
And thank you all. Stay well.
See you next time.